All right, today we are going to talk about the GP Summit that was held in October and what some of our consultants thought were our favorite finds or the best things that we learned there. The sessions, I'll show you in the next screen, there were tons of sessions, so we didn't, of course, include everything, but we hope that key things that'll kind of get your ideas flowing and get you on a topic is enough for you. So I'm Abra, and I'm a consultant over at Collins, and hopefully what I share with you will be interesting, and if you have any questions, you can always give me a call later on. So GP Summit, there were over 500 just GP attendees. There were also several hundred each of CRM and then all the other ERP products of NAB and AX and Solomon. But we had our own building for the Dynamics GP attendees, so it was quite comfy that you could just talk GP and not have to worry about whether that person was AX or any of the others. There was an expo, and that was a mixed expo, so you were able to look at both GP and CRM or any of the other products that you wanted, and there were over 200. If you so desired, you could go see the Microsoft campus, which was worth a quick trip out there, but we were there for a couple of hours, and I don't know if we needed to be there that long. Been there, saw that, but yeah, just something to see, but you don't need to spend all day there. There were 12 different breakout sessions, so you could attend 12 different sessions on products, along with an overview session of some of the products and general sessions. So there were 15 time slots for sessions. There was expo time at every lunch, and all of the receptions in the evenings were held in the expo. So it was quite a great time to kind of multitask, eat and discuss products. So that was kind of fun. There were also some vendor events in the evening and some optional training before and after Summit. And we expect that it's going to be very similar to this next year, except that it's not going to be in Seattle, it's going to be in Tampa. So I encourage you to take a look out at the GPUG Summit website for 2013. Right now, all it's really got on there is the dates for next year. So the dates for next year and the location. And then you could look at what the agenda was this year, because it will be very similar. So one of the sessions that we actually hosted was called Dynamics Idle. So I wanted to share a couple of things that we did in that session. It was presented by both customers and partners, and we hope to do it again next year. So I encourage anybody that just wants to kind of get in there and try getting up in front of a crowd and showing them some of your favorite features of GP. It was fun. Everybody was really easy on the presenters, and everybody got a prize for just presenting a tip, and then the audience voted and we gave a bigger prize. It was actually an free attendance to the next summit for next year for the grand prize, but there were also some great materials that we gave out for every customer. So in that session, I shared a little bit, and these are the things that I shared. These are some of my favorite things to do. I'm going to go ahead and just jump into them so you can see what they are. But on the Dynamics homepage, you're now able to not only show reminders, but show these little stacks of paper with the numbers of the reminders. So it's a very quick way to be able to see if you have to go attend to a task. So what you do is that you set up a smart list that says, show me all my customers that maybe have open orders or are over a certain amount. And then you can tell it to show it on your home screen with a reminder. And so this is this type of screen that you would see, and it would be to your specifications. So when you're setting up these reminders within a smart list, you just hit favorite at the top, add, and then select everything that you want. So here I've selected maybe my 1099 vendors that have a blank tax field, and I said that it's visible to the entire system. This could be just to myself as one user. And then I hit add, and I put a favorite and a reminder. And if I select that, that is what's going to tell the system, ask me a couple more questions, and also put it on my home screen. So the extra questions that are added is only show me this if the number of records, and I changed this to say is more than 0, so there's a drop down here, And then if I say display it as a queue, that's where it displays the stack of papers. And when I say okay, it goes ahead and it says, okay, now I'm going to show you all of your smart list that you set up this way on your home page. Now, in addition, when you're using Smart List, there are a couple of features that I don't think everybody knows about. And that's that when you're doing a column search, so if I said, show me the cities that begin with C and then also have an H in them. So using this special wildcard of a percentage sign says, show me those that are either Chicago, Charleston, or even something that the CH is not close together. There's any number of letters in between the C and the H. So that's what's going to show on my smart list, is anything that matches a C with an H in it. Another wildcard that you could use is an underscore. So if I say I'm looking for an address that contains land in it, but it doesn't end in land, it starts with 4 characters because I've got 4 underscores here, and then land. So you see it found Highland, but maybe I had Highland and Westland, and so I was looking for either one. And so if you do a search with an underscore, it says look for that many characters as a wildcard, where the percentage sign was looked for any number, any variable number. And then the last one that I wanted to show is that you could use brackets when you're doing a search. And so I said, show me states that begin with, and then I put a bracket around there. So it'll either be an M, a T, or an I. And that, so when I get my list, I've got all of my customer, or vendors in this case, that have states that begin with an M, an I, or a T. And you don't have to do anything special. It's been in the search capabilities for years. It's just something that a lot of people don't know about. So another customer had shown, these are her favorite features, so I'm just going to jump into them again. And these were all surrounding SOP. And one of them is if you go to your GP user preferences, there's a default document type. So you can set that to be a quote, an invoice, an order. You just select for that user. So when you sign on, what is my default sales order document that I want the screen to default to? So when I log in, if I had changed it to invoice, it would automatically have invoice there. So if I'm somebody who always deals with invoices, then that's what would show up in my screen. The other thing you could do for sales order processing is set up particular types of documents for each of these types that also automatically default when you log in. So in this case, if I do invoices and I say my default document is this STDINV, standing invoice, along with that, when I zoom down over this invoice ID in blue, I can set up that I even have a comment that automatically goes into all of those invoices of that type. And so I've said my comment is going to be this comment ID of Sarah. So when I actually log in to the sales order screen, it defaults to invoice, it defaults to my STD invoice type, and my comment ID at the bottom here is automatically already put into my document. And so maybe this is an invoice, don't forget to pay. I'm sure you wouldn't say that, but something like that. Now, when I go to search for a customer in SOP, so this is another tip, I can choose that I want as an advanced search. So I can look up names of customers and I could say, okay, my sorting that I automatically want to use whenever I do a search for a customer is by user-defined one. Now this is true of almost any lookup in the system. So whether it's customers, vendors, inventory, account numbers, you just go to your advanced lookup, you choose which lookup it is. So in this case I chose customers, and then I do what I want to sort by. So I said I wanted to sort by a user-defined one, and I can put a description of what that means for me, and a comment too. So when I come in to search for a customer, these are already options that I can say I want to sort by my user-defined one. So it's not something that you have to go searching and say, oh, I want to search. It's going to automatically use that as a drop down of what kind of thing do you want to search by. Now, as we're talking about searching, I wanted to make sure everybody knew that Ethotech has now said that their Smart Sort module that used to cost $1,000 is free for anybody that wants to download it with their partner. And what Smart Sort is an additional way to look up items, and I'll show you on a screen, in all of these windows. So if you look, there's a lot of company, financial, inventory, payroll, purchasing, sales, and system windows, over 40 windows. And what it does is it gives you that capability of an advanced search, but it actually defaults it for a user. So when they log in and say, I want to look up a customer, it not only gives them an option of doing an additional sort, but it already sorts it by how you say. So I don't have to go into there and say, I want to do this additional sort of, let's say, user defined 1 or 2 like I was doing. But this says, when I go to look it up, already sort by my sales territory, and I could have a specific sales territory out there. So it's just showing me my customers. And so you could set that up per person, per company, per system, and you can even have it go off a particular smart list. So if I have a smart list that restricts it to active customers that are within a certain territory, whatever else you want, it would already have that all filtered out for you. And again, this is a free download. Just get a hold of us and we'll help you download it. One of the other customers that shared, I'm not going to share what everybody did, but just simple things that everybody can use. So this one is within your user preferences. There's something called Autocomplete. So if I go to this Autocomplete button, this is where you say, when I do a search, like when I start typing in that I'm going to have a certain vendor and I start typing a vendor ID, you'll notice that that list of what pops up when you start typing gets longer and longer and longer. So this is a way to remove all entries and only store a certain amount, and I'll show you some other things within here. So here I was showing customer maintenance, but I had said that it could be vendor, it could be items. I start typing A, and then you have all these items that you have used before within the last, let's say, 30 days is what I had it set up to for autocomplete to be cleared. Well, I might have a bunch of garbage, some of the other ones that I've selected. If I don't want one of those in there, right here I can right click and delete the one that says like a bunch of garbage. So you might not have known that the right click is active in this screen that you could delete. But the other thing is, if you have in the screen before, you say remove these unused entries, you can remove them right there and then, so that when you go back in, you start creating a new list so that you have all the old ones kind of out of there. So if there are certain screens that you just have a bunch of things in there you don't want to show, that's a way to get rid of them. Now the other tip that Jim had shown was when you're printing a report, you may not have even realized that if you print it to screen, you can tell the system, I want to find, so up here in the find drop down, I want to find a particular word, and you can go looking for that word. Now, if you want to search for the next occurrence, you can just go ahead and say Control G, and then it'll find the next one. So Control F would have also opened up the find, but so would just hitting the find. And then Control G, Control G, Control G would keep going to the next occurrence for that item. The other thing is that under find, you have go to a certain page number, so that you can go ahead and say, hey, I want to go to page number 15 if there were 17 pages. So again, you may have known about that, but some people, unless they're told, they just don't really see that if I print these to screen, there's a way of just going ahead and saying I want to go to the next one. One of the other customers was just talking about some reversals and aliases that you can use in General Ledger. So the first thing is, if you didn't realize that in Dynamics there is an option to go and correct a journal entry. And you have two choices, whether you just want to back out the original entry or go ahead and back it out, create a correcting entry. Now, it's best if you go ahead and know that journal entry that you want to either back out or correct before you go into the screen, because if you hit this looking glass where it says original journal entry and you're towards the end of your year, it's going to be a long wait while it pulls up all of the applicable journal entry IDs that it could possibly be. So if I go into this transaction entry screen, which is just your normal general ledger transaction entry, if you hit the correct button, that's when you get the option of saying, do I want to just back it out, or do I want to go ahead and back it out and create a new one? So automatically the back out would be the opposite of what the journal entry was to begin with. And then the correcting would be just like the original entry, and it allows you to then go through and modify anything you need. So you cannot change anything on the back out one, except maybe the description and the batch and the date if you wanted. But on the correcting one, then you probably want to change the amounts and everything else. So you can change the amounts when you're updating the new one, but on the back out one, you're only allowed to change the header information, not the detail. Now, one of the things that as we were doing a correcting entry that Denise mentioned is that she uses aliases. So when you go into an account number, so I'm showing an account maintenance screen, you may not realize that you can have an alias out there. So maybe I have a travel accounting alias, TVLA. So when I'm actually entering an account number, instead of putting in 000 and the account number or 26520, I can literally type in TVLA and it'll pull up the account number for me. So if you have some accounts, as long as the alias is unique, you can use that instead of the account number as a shortcut so that you can enter. So some people like to just keep with the numbers, but some people want to set up aliases. Now, account roll-ups. It's another just section that people sometimes don't realize is out there. If you go under Inquiry Financial Account Roll-Up and hit the Modify button, you're going to create your own option of like a mini financial. So you can have up to 4 columns, and those columns can be an actual, a budget, which lets you pick the budget, a previous year, and then a calculated column. So if you do a calculated column, you can say something like, I want column C minus column B. And then at the bottom, you can choose multiple segments. Now what this allows you to do is I can say, like, I want segment or department 300, department 500. They do not need to be consecutive. You can enter them one at a time on this screen and hit insert. And they can be a lot out of segment 1, a lot out of segment 2, as many segments as you have in your chart of accounts. Here is a screen display of the calculated column. So you can do, all your different expressions of plus and minus and times and divided. And you tell it the order that you want to do the expression in. So this is for your calculated column. As I said, you can have for your various segments, I could put some from segment 1, some from segment 2, some from segment 3. So you have multiple account ranges. And that's not really able to happen in all of your Microsoft Dynamics GP reports that you use in Report Writer. You can do it in FRX Management Reporter, but this is within Dynamics GP that you're allowed to do this. Now when you go ahead and say, show me what I've selected, which accounts, it's going to come up and first show you a summary view by month, whatever you've chosen. So in this case, I had actuals, budgets, previous's, and then actual minus previous year. And that's what it showed me. Now I can click on any particular period and then have it show me one of these actual budget or previous year. So here I've said, let me see what was under my period 1 for my actuals, and it would show me, okay, here's your account numbers, here's the balance, and here's your description. You can print from any level. So you can get printouts that show the period, all 4 columns, and then you can print out even a detail. So if I print from the detail mode, it's going to show me all the different accounts. So mini trial balance with account numbers that are not even in any particular order except what you've chosen. One from this department, one from that department, all on one screen. And then the last one from the Dynamics Tips session that I wanted to share was something about Excel. So this is really looking at like the Excel report writer and just a simple way to use it. So if you go to Tools, Smart List Builder, Excel Report Builder, and go out to Excel Report Builder, you can choose to create reports. Now what we were going to show you is if you go to Tools, Resources, and Tables, that's where you're going to get all the information on which tables hold what data. You can also go out to this link and it'll actually help you find tables a little bit easier even than this path. And so we'll send you a copy of this PowerPoint so you can look at it. If you're going to run this Excel report writer, it says, where do you want me to publish these things so that you can look at it at a later date? So when you set up the Excel report builder, it's just a couple of simple screens. You tell it where you want these spreadsheets to be filed. And to actually create a report, it's much simpler than you might think. You just select, like I want everything from my vendor master file, and then you just click on those columns that you want to display. Then when you go ahead and create it, it creates it, pops you out to Excel, and you see those columns just like you would in a smart list. Except here, it's an active worksheet. And what I mean by that is that at any point in time, you can say refresh all, and it would refresh the data based on how that Excel spreadsheet was built. So I can save an Excel spreadsheet to my desktop, and later, without being in GP, I can say, let's refresh this. As long as you have a login into GP that has security to look at these fields, it'll allow you to update the spreadsheet. Now, if I go in and change a vendor, change something like the name, and then I go and say refresh, it's going to go ahead and refresh right on that screen. So it's instantaneous. It's not like it's sending it to a data mart. So now let's pop into some other things we learned at Summit. One of them was a 50 tips and tricks session. I just have about 7 or 8 little of the tips. Mark Polina is the one that started this, so I'm going to absolutely give him credit. And I left in here where you can go and look up these whole blog entries of how to do these things. The first one is just when you're doing a GL entry. If I'm creating a journal entry and there's a debit column and a credit column. If I just want to go heads down and every time I just want to stay in the debit column to enter an amount, the first time through I put in 100 and it'll stay in the debit column. But as I go to my next account number, if I put -100, it'll swap it over and just push it into credit. So it's just a way to speed up my negative debits end up pushing over to my credit column. The other thing that he mentioned is in AP, you can actually set up the system not to produce checks that are less than, let's say, $30. So I'm not creating these minimal checks. I'm waiting for those checks or those invoices to equal more than a certain amount before I create a check. Or maybe it's under $1 or something. So you're not creating checks that are under a certain dollar amount. The last thing that I'm going to do without showing you screens is tell you about in fixed assets. There is kind of a little hitch, at least up until 2010, that if you run fixed assets and you run a report, if you just run a report and you even don't put in anything, there is a hard-coded filter that says just go to Z. And so if you have assets that start with ZA, it would not be in there. So you need to make sure that you input a filter that says like ZZZ. One of the other things that he said is in sales order processing, people don't realize that just on the screen where it says document number and it's got this yellow this arrow that's not yellow normally, but you click it and it has a GL reference. So and this is what it's going to look like if you zoom down to one of these links that Mark's got, it'll tell you that, okay, in sales order processing, if you go look for, this transaction in GL, if I want to know a little bit about it, I can actually reference it in the sales order and it'll carry over to when it gets posted in general ledger. So just a nice little quick thing. What this one is all about is that if you have PO numbers, sometimes they get out of sync and it might jump. People might actually input a PO number instead of accepting what the default is. And so that creates a gap in your purchase order numbers. And so this tool helps with those gaps. So it's in the professional service tool library. And the reason I mention this is that we've told everybody in our past newsletters that you now get that entire library for free. So we wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. It used to be that to buy the whole kit was $5,000, or just to buy one of these little pieces or tools could cost $750 up to $2,000. So to combine account numbers, they're now kind of coming of age and saying, yes, everybody should have these. So if you don't have the ability to merge vendor numbers or account numbers or your customer numbers, and you need that, and even with this PO tool, these are all free now. You just need to have us help you install them. So get a hold of us. A couple more from Mark's session. Just the point that if you don't know it, when you're in Dynamics GP, if you go up to File, User, and Company, you can switch companies. You don't have to go File, Exit, relaunch Dynamics, and pick another company. So that's just what this top one is about, just making people realize that you can say File, User, and Company, and then switch companies. Within the drill down of Management Reporter, however you had the kind of report set up, it's going to start sorting from the left to the right. So if I had a bunch of account numbers from different departments, it's going to sort from the department if my department's first. But if I would rather it sort in the main segment order, then I just have to go to my report settings and my account and transaction detail tab and click on this little part that says sort it by my natural segment or my main segment. And it's just a lot easier for some people to look if all of these same like travel expenses are in the same area and they're not by department. Mark points out that when you're in SmartList, there's a column that's actually called Any Field. And if you pick that column in that SmartList, it's going to actually search all your fields and filter out whatever it is you're looking for. So in this case, you know, it might have been that I wanted to search for any field that started with these letters, and it'll search for, you know, whether it's customer name or document or street address or whatever it is, it'll search. Now he does say that it's not perfect, and if you have some fields that are numeric or dates, once in a while it'll send back a little error message saying it can't search it. But here, again, if you're just trying to find something that maybe somebody that lives on a street, or it started in a name and you're not sure if it's in the customer number or the vendor ID or just the vendor name or the short name, you can just search any field in that table. Okay, so one of the other things that was a very big topic for GP Summit was the upcoming release of Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013. And what Collins has been doing is testing out the beta code and making sure that we know, how to use everything and that we know if there's any issues. We've been creating blogs. We've been looking at all the blogs that are out there. And then we're posting very short little couple-minute videos on each of the features. So I encourage you to go out to YouTube and look for the Collins Computing channel. Also, originally we were just told that Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 was going to be available in December. We now know that the set date that Microsoft has said it's releasing it is December 19th, which happens to just be a Wednesday in the middle of the week. I wanted to show that we really do have these videos out there. There's some on some home pages. There's all kinds of different videos out there. So what's in GP 2013? Well, there are over 125 individual enhancements. So I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'm just listing the ones that we know of on the screen. So here's a lot of them. Now the web client that's getting released initially will work on financials and distribution. Now that sounds small, but that's really all of general ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, purchase order, sales order. So all of those modules have the ability to do the web client. And it's a full read, write, report. It's not just like the old portal. It's actual functional input of transactions. In phase 2, they're adding HR payroll, and then you see the other series that they're adding. The screens will look different on the web versus if you're connecting with a full client. The functionality is still there, but what you'll see is that all of these buttons at the top have to be complete buttons. They can't be just drop downs underneath another button. And some of the areas that used to have these little arrows are actually tabs. So the customer detail is a tab, the item detail is a tab, but it's still the same functionality. You're able to input all of the fields and get to all of the fields that you need to. The biggest noticeable change when you log in is that your home screen, you can tailor it a little bit more to what you want to see. So here, I've shown that on my home page, when I log in, I can choose to have one big window or pane, and then the rest can be either tiled or stacked to my right, or I can have it at the bottom like in this screen, or at the top or the left. It's up to me. And all I have to do is hit on a certain window, and that will expand to be the pane that is in focus. So even in the modules, so when not just my home screen, but if I go to sales or I go to inventory, the same ability to have multiple menus showing at the same time is there. And you can choose that you want one column, two columns, or three columns. Right now in these displays, I really just have one column with the rest of them stacked either on the right or the bottom. But a pretty cool new feature. Probably the most applauded feature when we went to GP Summit was the change from whatever you're doing, whatever printer is your default printer, when you log into GP, instead now you have the option of selecting a printer or a PDF to send a report to after you hit the print button. So that's a huge change. It really works. It's in the beta version. We've been using it. Some of the big module enhancements were things like that I can edit a remit to if a transaction in payables has not already been paid, not partially paid, not fully paid, not paid at all. So I don't want to be able to change, where a check was sent because it was already printed. But before something is printed, you can go into that transaction and actually change the address before you pay. So it used to be that you could just do the dates and the PO number and the description, and now you've got the ability to change that remit to ID. Another huge feature is for your 1099s. You are now able to go into individual transactions, and you can choose in this screen whether they're just my 1099 transactions, or if I just want to look at transactions that maybe weren't 1099 originally, and now they are, and I want to put a 1099 in them. So I can change not only the 1099 amount, but also the box number and the tax type. Additionally, there's another screen that you can choose several vendors at the same time, or one vendor, and change them from a non-1099 to a 1099 vendor of a certain type, like miscellaneous, or from a 1099 vendor to not a 1099 vendor. And it will go back all of your history and update and create the transactions needed. So it knows that it's just keeping track of when I pay an invoice. If that original invoice was marked as a 1099 invoice, I'm going to keep track of the amount I paid. So now you can go into those invoices and modify how much of that should have been a 1099 amount. So when it's paid, it keeps track of it for you. In the past, I could go into a payment and say I wanted to see what the check stub would have looked like, but if I had any other credit memos that were applied at the same time as my payment was applied, I wouldn't see that in my check stub, and now I do. So as you're creating a payables check and you're saying, okay, I maybe want to put these debits and these credits against this invoice, you can now say, recreate that for me. Let me see what it looked like. And before, it almost forced people to take copies of their checks and the remittances, and that's no longer necessary. The other thing in my payables that so many people are excited about is if you have credit memos that are applied to vendor invoices, I can void the check and it will go and void any other documents that were applied to that invoice at the same time. So on that previous screen, I might have this check remittance that showed at the same time that I paid this, I also had a credit memo that I applied. It would unapply those documents at the same time as you're voiding that check. All right, so Management Reporter. Again, that's another big new module that everybody's excited about. There were several sessions at GP Summit. What the great thing about Management Reporter is that now it's just even more deeply integrated with all of the modules, all of the GP and AX and everything else. You've got more flexibility. It's not an Access report now. It's actually a SQL-based report writer. You're able to have different input-output types. So you'll see, I'm going to show you some of the features. And yes, I'm completely excited about these features. One is just when you print reports. I can create a report and it can be an XPS. I can publish it. I can go to an Excel file and I can send those to other users, and I'll show you that. You can actually schedule out reports very, very simply. And as I just mentioned, not only can you email a link to a person, I can also put it in a SharePoint area. So I can put it either in a SharePoint shared file or directory. And there were also sessions on how do I get Management Reporter functional. I've got FRX, but now I need to use Management Reporter. And so there's just a couple of quick steps that you go ahead and install Management Reporter, you make sure it's reading your data, and then you go back to FRX, you do these few steps, and that will get it ready so that you can migrate FRX directly to Management Reporter. Very, very simply, it brings in all the rows, the columns, the trees. In Management Reporter, you can say, I want to look at my report definitions. And those report definitions can have rows, columns, trees, and if you click on a report, it knows which row, column, and tree goes with it. And you can choose to select individual or all. You can export this and then import it to other companies. One of the things I said was something I'm so excited about with Management Reporter is that I can send an email to somebody within my organization that has access to the Management Reporter area. They would get this email that says, here, I want you to view my balance sheet. When they click on it, they would see these three options. They can choose whether to go view that report in a report viewer mode, in Excel, or just like a PDF is what XPS is, just like a PDF. Now they can choose that they always want it to choose that. So at the bottom, don't show me these options. I always want to go to Excel. But you as a manager or somebody distributing the report, you don't have to think about all that. You just send them the link and it'll automatically give them that. The other thing is we talk about report collaboration. When I'm in a report and I'm looking at data, I'm actually allowed or able to create comments. And when I regenerate that report, I can have the comments stick with it. So if I know that I need to explain why on this payables transaction, it was a certain amount, then I can go ahead and explain this so that when the person that is going to view this report next, or even myself, looks at this, I know why something is the way it is. And as I said, as you regenerate that same report, you can choose to keep the comments with that report. Another great feature with Management Reporter that's newer is that if I have a report or a row that I'm looking at, so maybe it's a row, a column, or a tree, if I right click on that and say associations, it will tell me what report this building block piece is used in, or reports. So in this case, this one row definition of PL summary is used in 5 different reports. And I see that very simply as I'm looking at a row definition. So that way you can check, is this even used anymore? Maybe it's not. I can delete it. Or if I change this one row, what other reports am I going to affect? So maybe instead of changing it, I need to make a copy of this row. In Management Reporter, the newest version, 2012, there's a ton of flexibility in the detail that I can see. So this is a column layout. And in my column layout, I have descriptions, I have account numbers, and then I have something that I can choose called attributes, and I'll go into that in a second. And then I have financial dimensions. That's what FD stands for. So financial dimensions, kind of like in FRX, I can choose whether it's actual or whether it's budget, and then I can choose whether it's a year or a period, and then I can show the information in that column.
Yeah.
But these attributes are detail. So if I want to show in this column detail about what my journal entry ID is, my source document, my reference, my audit trail, originating master ID, there are so many more fields that you can show for detail in Management Reporter. It's crazy. And then I mentioned that you can schedule out reports or groups of reports. So the first thing is I can just say, I want to schedule a report, but maybe I have 3 or 4 reports that I want to have automatically print weekly or daily. All I have to do is create a group, select the reports I want in that group, and then name that group. So we encourage people to attend these conferences. The next one is in New Orleans. It's in March. We're suggesting that you send at least one person from your organization so that they can come back, they can access all of the presentations on a virtual website for Convergence after the event. And so then they can share it with everybody else at your organization. And so we want to make sure that if you register, if you can just send us a quick email so that we know, hey, we need to invite you to our customer dinner. We're having some lunch networking sessions. We're having some special sessions with Microsoft execs that we want to invite you to. But if we don't know you're going, we can't invite you to them. So please let us know if you register for Convergence.